As part of this lecture, let's go to the details related to setting up Postgres database and tables. To set up Postgres database and tables, first we need to have Postgres database server. We can set up Postgres database server either locally on our Mac or Windows based laptop or desktop, or it can be set up on remote machines, or we can directly provision from cloud platforms. In this case, we'll be taking care of setting up Postgres database server locally. First, we'll take care of installing latest version of Postgres database server. Along with the Postgres database server, we'll also get something called as PgAdmin, which is nothing but IDE. We will see how to use PgAdmin quickly. Then we'll get into the details related to managing Postgres database server using Task Manager on Windows. This is specific to Windows. On Mac, there is nothing like Task Manager. You might have to run commands. I might not be able to go to the details about the commands that are supposed to be used on Mac, but I'll walk you through the details about how to manage Postgres database server using Task Manager on Windows. Then we'll see how to connect to Postgres database using PgAdmin. We'll set up new database end user. Then we'll get into the details related to setting up required tables. In this case, we'll not be setting up any data in the tables. We'll take care of populating data in the tables at a later point in time. There's a dedicated lecture which covers CRUD operations using SQL. In that, we'll actually populate the data into sales table. Also, we can use programming languages to actually populate data from files into the tables. We might also see those details at a later point in time. First, let us understand what we are going to achieve. I'll be whiteboarding and explaining to you. Then we'll get into the action. Let's assume this is our laptop or desktop with Windows or Mac or Linux as operating system. On top of this, we might also have IDs such as IntelliJ, VS Code, etc. We might have browser and other softwares if the operating systems are desktop based. Once we have our laptop or desktop or some server with one of these operating systems, we should be able to set up Postgres database server. Postgres database server will be up and running all the time in our Windows or Mac or Linux. Let's assume this is Postgres database server. When it comes to Postgres database server, it is multi-tenant database server. Tenant means who lives. In this case, multiple things can live as part of this database server. That's why it is called as multi-tenant database server. What does that mean? You will have multiple databases set up in Postgres database server. Let's assume this database is nothing but Postgres. By default, when it comes to Postgres database server, there will be a database by name Postgres. Let's assume it is this one. There's a typo here. Let me fix it. The default database is nothing but Postgres. It have all system related tables and other overhead. On top of Postgres, we can have as many other databases as we want. In this case, we will be setting up additional database by name retail_db. However, you should be having users with right permissions to access these databases. Only those users who have permissions to take care of certain tasks on these databases can be using these databases. Others will not be using. So we can have multiple users. Let's say this is user 1. Like that, you can have multiple users. Again, there will be one super user. The super user name is nothing but Postgres. This super user will have access to all the databases. We'll also set up another user called as retail_user. We can have as many users as we want like this. Typically, Postgres, which is nothing but super user, will have access to all the databases in the Postgres database server, whereas we should be able to grant permissions explicitly on non-super users onto databases depending upon the requirements. In this case, we'll be creating a user by name retail_user and we'll be granting all the permissions on this database to this user. We'll take care of all those tasks as part of this lecture. On top of Postgres database server, we'll also get something called as PgAdmin. PgAdmin is IDE. It will facilitate us to write queries and other commands to interact with Postgres databases using these users. We typically use the username as well as database name to connect to a specific Postgres database using PgAdmin, and then we will be able to write queries to take care of whatever we wanted to take care as part of specific database using specific user. We'll also go to the details about PgAdmin as part of this lecture. Now, the first task is to install latest version of Postgres database server. Let's go to the details. In this case, I'll be using Windows. Steps are same when it comes to Mac. We should be able to open our favorite browser. Let me use Edge here. Let me close all these things first. Now, let me open Edge. You can also use Chrome if you want, but in this case, I'm trying to launch Edge and I will attempt to use Edge. Here, we should be able to visit google.com. In that, we should be able to say Postgres database server. The official website is nothing but PostgreSQL.org. You can click on this. Then you can click on download. Here we are talking about Windows, hence we need to click on this. If you are using Mac, you should be able to click on this and take care of downloading the relevant version of PostgreSQL server. In this case, I'll go to Windows. The latest version is nothing but 15. You need to make sure you download the installer first and then you have to take it further. Even on Mac, the steps are same. You can actually go back here. You can click on Mac OS. You see there's something called as installer. You have to download the installer and then you can take it further. Let me go to Windows here. Let me click on download the installer. Let me download this one, which is nothing but 15.2. Here we are talking about Windows, hence we should be able to click on this. It will take care of downloading the Postgres database server. You see the message here. It says your download should begin in a few seconds. If it doesn't begin, then you can click here. Let's wait for a few more seconds and then we'll click here. It is not downloading. Let me click on this. It have actually started downloading, but we did not review here. So let me cancel this. Still the earlier one is downloading. Now it is downloaded. We should be able to click on this to get into that file using Explorer on Windows. If it is Mac, you should be using Finder. Now it is nothing but executable. Let me clean this up. You will see file with .exe on Windows. If you're not seeing extensions here on Windows, you should be able to go to View. Then there should be a section under Show. It is nothing but hidden items and file name extensions. You need to make sure you click on this to see extensions of the files. On Mac, you will be seeing either DMG or PKG, but on Windows, you'll be seeing .exe. Now, you should be able to double click on this. Keep in mind that it is installer. It will take care of actual installation of PostgreSQL server along with other tools such as PgAdmin. Now, let me click on next. This is the location where it will be installed. Let me click on next. In this case, let me deselect stack builder. Make sure you follow this carefully and deselect whatever are not required. We want PostgreSQL server, we want PgAdmin, we want command line tools, but we don't want stack builder. Hence, we have deselected this. Make sure you deselect only this one and make sure you select the other three. Now we should be able to click on next. In this window, it is saying please provide a password for the database superuser Postgres. As I have mentioned to you earlier, when we set up Postgres database server, we'll get one database by name Postgres. It will have all the tables to manage overhead of the Postgres database server. On top of Postgres database, we'll also get Postgres user. So in this case, it is asking us to configure password for the user Postgres, which is nothing but super user who can manage the entire Postgres database server. You can configure password based upon your preference. One of the standard for locally set up Postgres database servers is nothing but to use Postgres itself as password, but feel free to use whatever you want for the password. But make sure you configure with the password which can be remembered by you for your learning purpose. Keep in mind that when it comes to Postgres database server in actual projects, we will not be having access to Postgres superuser. As we are setting up local Postgres database server, as we are the owners of that database server, we have the control to set up the password for this user. Otherwise, we will not be having. There will be a team called as DBS. DBS stands for Database Administrator. They are the ones who will be having permissions to manage users and also passwords for the users. Especially for Postgres, we will not be having access to password at all. Now, let me click on next here. I have used Postgres as password for Postgres super user. The default port is nothing but 5432. You can set up port number 5432 like this. If you wanted to customize, you can customize, but leave it as default. Don't change this port. Now let's click on next. When it comes to locale, let's use default locale. Let's click on next. Then let's click on next. It is saying setup is now ready to begin installing PostgreSQL on your computer. Let's click on next. It is taking care of installing Postgres database server on this Windows. Even on Mac, the steps are similar. I would suggest you to attempt these steps on Mac as well. If you are running into any issues, feel free to reach out to us. We'll be there to support you. Let's wait until the Postgres database server is fully set up. Then we'll take it further. Now the installation is done. We should be able to click on finish. Now we are done. We should be able to go to services and see whether Postgres database server is up and running or not. Before getting into the details related to reviewing services to see whether Postgres database server is up and running or not, let's review something called as PgAdmin. As I have mentioned to you earlier, PgAdmin is nothing but software which will facilitate you to interact with our Postgres databases. PG stands for Postgres in PgAdmin. We typically use components of PgAdmin such as query editor to interact with the databases. You will understand what I am talking about when I start using PgAdmin at a later point in time. For now, just let's review PgAdmin quickly. Here we have to search for PgAdmin using the search in the taskbar. Now let me say PgAdmin. You see PgAdmin is showing up now because it is installed along with Postgres database server when we take care of installation by double clicking on this exe file. It will take a bit of time when we first launch PgAdmin. Once it is launched, it will ask you to set master password. Keep in mind this password is for PgAdmin, not for Postgres databases that are being set up as part of Postgres database server. The reason is we will be able to save the credentials of databases as part of PgAdmin to make sure people who get into your system cannot directly access those databases using the credentials that are saved as part of PgAdmin. They have this additional security. Here we have to set up master password for PgAdmin. Let me use ITversity for this. For the Postgres user that is part of our Postgres database server, I have given password as Postgres. Here it is ITversity. Now let me click on OK. PgAdmin is launched successfully. Let's maximize this. Let's expand. You can see there is one server here. This server is based on the local one. You should be able to enter the password which is used at the time of installing our Postgres database server for Postgres superuser. If you read the message here, it says, please enter the password for the user Postgres to connect to the server PostgreSQL 15. That is what we have installed as of now in this local machine. Here we have to say Postgres as password because that is the password we have given at the time of setting up our Postgres database server. This is not PgAdmin master password. You should be able to click on this to save the password. Now you can click on OK. You can see that it is connected to the Postgres database server using a database called as Postgres. In this case, it is connected using Postgres database within Postgres database server. Let's go back to this picture and understand what is going on. Let's delete these because these are not ready yet. When we set up Postgres database server on Windows or even on Mac, we'll get both Postgres database server as well as PgAdmin. At the time of setting up this Postgres database server, it took care of setting up this Postgres database which have tables related to database server itself. Along with the database, it will also have user by name Postgres which is super user. Using this user and password, we are connected to this database using whatever we are seeing here. It is nothing but PgAdmin. That being said, now you should be able to expand the databases. As of now, we have one database. It is nothing but Postgres. You should be able to right click on this and then click on query tool. This is what we typically use to interact with databases from PgAdmin. PgAdmin have quite a few other capabilities also, but most of the time is spent using query editor by the developers. To take care of other things, you can use other components of PgAdmin. Make sure you are fairly comfortable with what you are seeing here and also query editor as you go along and set up things as part of the Postgres database server. Keep in mind here it is based on the connection. If you wanted to review the connection, you should be able to click on properties here. The name is nothing but PostgreSQL 15. You can go to connection and you can see the details here. As part of host name, it is saying localhost. Port number is 5432. It means it is local database server. Localhost is name for local IP. The local IP is nothing but this one, 127.0.0.1. For this, the alias is nothing but localhost. Localhost means the same machine which we are using at this time. You can consider localhost as the Windows machine on which the database server is set up. So if it is remote one, we'll be having the IP address or DNS alias for the remote server. I'll talk about some of these key networking concepts at a later point in time. For now, just remember that as we have set up Postgres database server as well as PgAdmin on the same machine, we are referring to the Postgres database server from PgAdmin as localhost. That being said, you can also see the details about database and user here. This is database. This is user. Password is not visible here. If you want, you can reset the password and you can take it further. That being said, let's close this. This is how you should be able to quickly review PgAdmin, which you can use. Keep in mind, here, as Postgres is superuser, Postgres superuser can access all the databases in this database server. As of now, there is only one database. It is nothing but Postgres. That is why it is only showing this one. As we add more databases, we will see more databases here. Using Postgres as user, we will be able to access those without any issues. Now, if you expand, it will also provide you details with respect to schemas under schemas. By default, there will be only one schema, which is nothing but public. In Postgres, a database will contain multiple schemas. Schemas are the containers for the database objects such as tables, views, etc. We'll typically create tables, views, etc. under schemas. By default, the tables views will go under public schema. You will understand once we start setting up databases and then creating tables in the databases. This is the hierarchy when it comes to Postgres database. First, you have Postgres database server, then you have database, then you have schema. As part of schema, you will have tables. On top of the databases, you also have users. Users might have access to one or more databases depending upon the nature of the user. That being said, now let's also go to the details about managing Postgres database server using Task Manager on Windows. To go to the Task Manager, you should be able to go to search here, then search for Task Manager. Task Manager will facilitate you to manage all the softwares that are running on Windows at this time. I'm talking about the softwares which are running, not installed. Task Manager will only provide you the capabilities to manage the softwares that are running. They are called as services. In some cases, for some of the services, you might be able to even start using Task Manager, not only monitoring the ones which are running. Let's get into the details. You will understand what I'm talking about here. In this case, let me click on Task Manager. Now Task Manager is opened. You can see the details about whatever is running under process. Another important section which you need to keep in mind is nothing but services. If you go to the services, you should be able to monitor all the services that are running. These services are by default sorted in ascending order by name. You can see here there is a upper cap. It means the names are sorted in ascending order. Now let's scroll down to P. We should be able to see Postgres here. It is visible here. As of now, it is running. In case if you wanted to stop, you should be able to right click on this and click on stop. You can also click on restart to restart, so on and so forth. Make sure you keep this in mind. You should be able to manage the Postgres database server using services as part of Task Manager in Windows. On Mac, it is a little bit tricky. You have to use commands. You can Google around and get the commands. In case if you are not able to figure out, feel free to reach out to us. We'll provide the required instructions or commands. But if you perform a simple Google search, you should be able to see the commands related to managing the Postgres that is set up using the approach I have covered as part of this lecture. So in this lecture so far, we have gone through the details about reviewing how the Postgres database server runs on our laptops or desktops along with PgAdmin. Then we got into the details related to installing latest version of Postgres database server. We have quickly reviewed PgAdmin. Then we have gone through the details related to managing Postgres database server using Task Manager on Windows. Now it is time for us to connect to Postgres database using Postgres as user and then set up new database and user. Once the new database and user are set up, we'll also go to the details related to setting up required tables. We'll set up table by name sales based on the data which we have explored so far. I'll talk about those details in the next lecture.